Episode 2 of Life on Earth is called Building Bodies, and it basically follows marine invertebrates. So obviously life on Earth started in the sea, and a wide variety of invertebrate groups evolved there, and many of them still live there. This episode basically follows them, and we open up with this montage of various aquatic invertebrates around the Great Barrier Reef. It's pretty great. It does actually follow on pretty well from the last episode, which obviously concluded at the Great Barrier Reef. So I think if you were to sort of binge watch the whole thing, it wouldn't feel like as much of a jarring transition as I made out in the last video. It's a pretty good way of opening things, because I think they're the sort of animals that, again, aren't that interesting to most people. They are quite underappreciated. It was good to see the wide variety of things that are there, because they are actually pretty cool. And the proper opening deals with fossils. We go to Morocco, we see various fossils of various marine invertebrates. We see various different types of invertebrates, mollusks, crustaceans, brachiopods, stuff like that. And then we start to dive into the different types of marine invertebrates, starting with the more primitive ones, things like flatworms. The flatworms are pretty good. It's interesting watching them travel around the bottom of the ocean floor and then swimming around, because they're quite hypnotic to look at. We start to look at slightly more advanced types of invertebrates, things like roundworms, brachiopods as well. They're quite interesting. Seeing them in Japan is quite interesting because they look pretty much unchanged from how they did way back in the Cambrian period. The three main groups we look at in this episode are the mollusks, the echinoderms, and the arthropods. We spend quite a lot of time with mollusks, and I think it's good because ultimately we're going to get more of the arthropods in later episodes when we go to land. So I think it was worth spending quite a bit of time highlighting mollusks here, because mollusks are, very abundant animals. They're some of the most abundant animals on Earth. We start looking at more simple ones, things like bivalves, your scallops, your clams. The scallops are quite good. They're actually quite funny watching them move around the water. That was quite funny. Clams are pretty cool as well. They don't actually move at all. We start looking at more interesting mollusks, things like sea slugs. The various sea slugs are quite cool compared to the ones on land, which, aren't the nicest to look at. They've all got really nice patterns, which are obviously like a warning to other animals to show that they're poisonous. The most interesting of the sea slugs I found was the glaucus. That was really cool. It eats jellyfish, and I had seen that before, and it was very, very cool. It kind of looks like a fairy almost. But it's interesting watching how it eats the jellyfish and actually uses the venom in the jellyfish to enhance its own defences. I knew about that, but it was interesting watching it getting highlighted. That was quite cool. Then we spent some time talking about the most famous prehistoric mollusks, the ammonites. The ammonites are obviously quite important to talk about because as far as mollusks go, in prehistory they are the most iconic. They've probably got the most iconic shells of any mollusk, if I'm honest. It's a pretty cool image, that fossilised ammonite shell. And it was good that they spent quite a bit of time talking about them. We kind of theorised to how they were able to move through the water, the different niches that different ammonites would have had. Some of them must have lived on the sea floor, and that kind of leads us into the nautilus, which is the closest thing alive today like an ammonite. They're not closely related, but they do kind of fill that niche. So it was really interesting. It felt like you were getting a snapshot of prehistory, which is something the last episode did and other episodes will do as well. I thought that was very good and very effective. And then we kind of briefly talk about the other cephalopods, things like octopus and squid. We don't spend a lot of time talking about them. I kind of wish we did, to be honest, because to me they're the most interesting types of mollusks. But I guess by that point we'd kind of covered most of the things there were to talk about regarding mollusks, namely their shells and the evolution of that. It was a really good exploration into the sheer diversity of mollusks. That was really good because this is the only time we get to look at them in the series at all, so that was quite good. And then we talk about the echinoderms, things like starfish, sea urchins, stuff like that. This was interesting. They didn't spend a lot of time highlighting them, to be honest. To be fair, there isn't as much to talk about them compared to mollusks or crustaceans, so that was kind of fair. Kind of all had the same kind of body shape. Even sea cucumbers, when you could kind of see they're kind of like an extended urchin almost. I thought it was interesting. It was definitely a really effective tool. It was very simplified, for sure, that sort of animation of them all turning into each other. But it was interesting to show kind of how similar they were, so that was quite good. The rest of the episode is spent talking about segmented animals. It's mainly dealing with arthropods. Similarly to the way they talked about ammonites, they also highlighted trilobites. Again, they're probably the most famous prehistoric arthropods, I would wager. And they highlighted how well trilobites seem to be preserved in the fossil record. It was really cool. It was really good looking at their eyes. It gave you a glimpse into what early arthropods would have looked like. The horseshoe crabs as well. That was really cool, because similar to the way that nautilus are kind of the closest things to ammonites alive today, horseshoe crabs are the closest things to trilobites that are alive today, and they were really cool. Just watching Attenborough comb the beach alongside the horseshoe crabs was really cool, because I kind of forget about them. They are actually really interesting animals, and they are so prehistoric and so primitive that it is very much a snapshot of prehistory, because they were basically doing the exact same things that they were doing the dinosaurs, and even before then. So that was really cool. And the other stuff with the crustaceans was good. It was an interesting look into the different types of them, things like krill, shrimp, stuff like that. The Japanese spider crabs were probably the most interesting part because they were the biggest of them all. It was interesting watching the Japanese fishermen catching them. It was actually a bit depressing watching all the bycatch caught alongside them, and it was kind of sad to know that things haven't really changed much since the 70s, really, with regards to that. We're a bit more aware of it now, but still pretty bad. I think Attenborough did a good job of using the Japanese spider crab to highlight the way a crustacean's body works, especially the molting. That was really good. And watching the different sizes of the shells was really interesting. The last bit of footage we get is Attenborough combing a tropical beach, talking about how arthropods, they jump from ocean to dry land, and that's highlighted through the robber crab. Again, like everything in this series, they use really good examples to highlight their points. I think when you're thinking of arthropods that come to land, you maybe thought of the horseshoe crabs that have kind of moved on to dry land permanently, but the robber crab's such a good example because it's such a big, really weird looking animal. It kind of puts an image in your mind of what the first arthropods to come into dry land were like. So I thought that was really good. The robber crab as well is a really weird looking crab. I haven't really seen it before or since in these series, I don't think. I mean, I've obviously seen it before in other things, but not in these kind of series. I thought that was really good. It was a really effective way of ending things. So yeah, this episode is pretty good. Again, much like last episode, it's very interesting. This is another one that could have been a bit boring, but I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was really cool that all the stuff with the mollusks was great. I think the highlights for me were the glaucus and the Japanese spider crabs, but everything else was pretty good as well. It was very informative. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this episode, what were your highlights, let me know. And yeah, I'll be doing the next one next week, which is all about the first arthropods on land, so look forward to that. And as ever, feel free to like, comment and subscribe, or don't if you want to, it's perfectly fine. And I'll see you next time, and goodbye.